like to welcome everyone to this afternoon's Planning and Zoning meeting. And the first order of business is to watch a small video. We'd like to remind you to turn your phones to vibrate, off, or airplane mode so it doesn't disturb the meeting and those watching the television at future times. So if you could roll the video, please.
Welcome to the City of Mesa Planning and Zoning Board meeting. We appreciate your interest in the future development of our community and welcome your comments. At this time, we ask you to turn off or select the vibrate option on your mobile devices. Today's agenda includes a consent agenda. These items will be read into the record and acted on in one motion. If you would like to speak on any of these items, please fill out a blue card located in the back of the room and bring it to the front. The items will then be removed from the consent agenda and voted on individually. Each case will be introduced by city staff, then the applicant, followed by public comments. The Planning and Zoning Board makes recommendations to the City Council and votes on each case. City Council meetings are held twice a month at 5:45 p.m. in the council chambers. Visit mesaaz.gov to view their meeting schedule. All planning and zoning meetings are broadcast live and rebroadcast on Mesa Channel 11. To view the programming schedule, visit mesachannel11.com.
All right. Our first order of business is to consider the minutes from the March 25th and March 26th study sessions and regular hearings. Do I hear a motion on the minutes? Oh, that's right. Ms. Hudson will be abstaining. She was not here. Do I have a motion?
Shall we do them separately so she can?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I move for approval of the study session minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Anybody?
Please cast your votes. Passes unanimously. This is hard. We haven't got to the hard stuff yet. All right. Now, I entertain a motion for the regular hearing.
I'll move for approval of the minutes of the regular meeting.
I'll second.
Thank you. Cast your votes. But we only get Beth, do yours again. Passes unanimously. Okay. Thank you.
I want to make sure that was clear on the study session. Was that both study sessions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Both study sessions.
Does that work?
Do we need to start over again, John?
I think that would be best because Ms. Hudson's, that's what she was
we have
here
a
and wasn't
quorum.
here.
Let's just do the whole thing, and if Lisa just you'll abstain from the whole thing.
Okay. I move for approval of all the minutes of all the study sessions and the regular meeting.
Is there a second? All right. Thank you, Suzanne. Please cast your votes. Passes unanimously with Mr. Arnett absent, and
We got it.
oh, we have to do it again.
I think we've got it.
All right. Thank you. We're now here. Our next item is C1, discuss and provide comments on GP Major 14-001-Longbow. Let's turn the time over to Mr. Wesley for a short presentation.
Okay. Chairman and members of the board, welcome this afternoon. We did have two major general plan amendments submitted for this calendar year. And first, I'm just going to go over some of the basic background and process before I get into the two different cases. The major general plan amendment process has some state statute requirements to go with it. They require all major amendments to be filed at the same time each year and then ultimately heard together by the council. And they have to be heard in the same year that they're filed. They also require a 60-day review process before the public hearings are held by the Planning and Zoning Board, and do require that the Planning and Zoning Board ultimately hold two public hearings, one at a regular meeting and one at some other time and location. We have found in the past that because of all those requirements from the statutes that when we get to the end of the process and we come back to both the Planning and Zoning Board and Council for those public hearings, it's really kind of late to make any changes to the application. And you sit here and you say, I like it, but if you would have done this, we could add more support. And so to deal with that, we've interjected this opportunity up front in the process for the Planning and Zoning Board, and then we'll also be meeting with the council, for you to give any input to the applicants about their application. Is there anything that you particularly like or see a problem with, any further information you feel like you would need, or anything you think should be adjusted in the application before they make that final request? So they have that information. They have the opportunity to make a follow-up submittal in early May. And that really kind of locks in the application at that point. So that's the purpose this evening. I'll make a brief presentation about each of them. We'll do them individually. I'll make the first presentation. Then you can make any comments, ask any questions you may have at this time. The applicant is here if you want to ask them specifically any questions. But it's an opportunity for them to hear what your thoughts, concerns might be, so that they can take that in consideration as they further develop their request. So again, as this shows, that follow-up submittal is due May 6th. We'll go through that 60-day review process in June and July. You'll hold hearings in August and September, and then after you approve it, it'll go on to council for their action, or make your recommendation. So, GP Major 1401, known as Longboat, deals with a 300-acre property that's on the north side of McDowell between Higley and Wrecker Roads. Goes up on the east side to the 202 freeway. Currently, most of the area is designated as business park. The area north of Longboat there on the east side is designated as community commercial. The applicant is proposing to change the designation on the entire property to mixed-use residential. The business park designation is primarily for industrial, office, commercial-type activities. Of course, in the community commercial is primarily for commercial activities. The mixed-use residential is primarily an industrial, office, and commercial district, but it does also allow, as indicated by the name residential, allows up to 30% of the area to be used for residential purposes at a minimum of 15 units per acre. So it introduces the opportunity for residential use, and again in that high density format, into this location. And our general plan guidelines for what constitutes a major amendment says that in areas around the airports, both Falcon and Gateway, if you're introducing a residential use, that makes it a major amendment. So that's why it's here before you as a major amendment as opposed to a minor amendment. In the project narrative that's been submitted, the applicant gives us some information as they have looked at it in terms of what the current condition would provide in terms of the number of jobs and housing, and then what the proposed change would result in terms of the jobs and housing. And so you can see the number of jobs they project will stay the same. Then introduces the opportunity for up to 500 dwelling units. As we look at, and we really haven't done any significant analysis at this point. That'll happen later after we get the final submittal and get more comments. But just looking at it on its surface, did see that with 300 acres, the mixed-use residential allows up to 30% of that to go residential. So that'd be approximately 90 acres, and then a minimum of 15 units per acre. That could be someplace up more around 1,400 dwelling units instead of the 500 they're saying they would put in there. So it would appear that they're self-limiting the amount of residential they may actually put in on the property, but they haven't gone anything beyond this table at this point in terms of explaining that. Did also want to make sure the board was aware we have a Falcon Field sub-area plan, and that sub-area plan also designates this area as business park. And so we're not only amending the general plan, we're in effect amending the sub-area plan. And then, as you know, we're working on, we'll be talking about it later on this agenda, the general plan update that we've been working on, that we'll be looking for approval on and be going to the voters next November. That plan also indicates this area as employment with a little bit of commercial up by the freeway, and does not include the option either for the residential use. So with that background, are there any questions or comments you have for me, or any just general comments you want to provide to the applicant?
Board members?
Should we make our comments to you as far as this project is concerned, the concerns? I of all people, understand or agree with private property rights and the owner's rights to do what they should. My problem here is I feel such a need to protect the airport. This comes right at kitty corner with the airport and the runways, and I would feel much better about this if somehow it was carved out that residential was not in the southwest corner of this. The I have a huge concern with that. So when I read it, I couldn't tell if they were already self-limiting, but the whole piece is what they're asking for to be rezoned, correct?
To have the land use designation as
Yes.
the mixed-use residential, yes, they're showing it on the whole parcel. Zoning would be a later
But
step.
I didn't understand where the 500 number came from, because when I was adding it up, I was just roughly saying 300 acres, 100 acres at 15 plus. It didn't make sense to me. Okay, so those are my comments on that.
Okay?
Can you go back to the previous slide that had the... Yeah, I think that's a good observation.
I'm curious, John, how this equates to the work that we're going to be hearing later on in this meeting on the new 2040
Correct.
general plan.
That's one of the issues that we will have to figure out as we go forward. Should an application such as this one and even the next one get approved through council, and now it's not the same as what's in the plan that's going before the voters, and the voters will assume they approve that plan, now they're different, and what's the plan for the area? That's an issue that we know we'll need to figure out between now and then, but we have not had the time yet since these just came in to try to figure out exactly how to handle that.
Is there a vast difference? I don't, as I remember reading through the new general plan, I didn't see that much difference really between what they're trying to achieve right now.
Right. There's really not a significant difference in the general plan versus the new general plan versus what we have in place today. It really does designate this area for employment. It's a little bit fuzzy on the edges, and so does it allow for a little bit of overlap? Maybe, but I think again we still, even with the new general plan, we go back and look at what the sub-area plans say, and that sub-area plan is very clear where that employment is supposed to be. So I think we would be at odds between the two.
In what Ms. Coombs has brought up on the single-family home residence in there, is there any encumbrances that you see in this general plan amendment of moving those to a different? How can we, what am I trying to say, follow that through so that when the time comes that they redevelop that area, which probably hopefully will be soon, that can be watched and not slip under the doorway unannounced.
Let me make sure if I understand what you're saying.
Making
here.
sure that the housing portion moves away from the airport.
Right.
Because, that's going to be a constant problem. They may get avigation, easement,
Right.
sign-offs and everything, but every time something big goes over, they're going to be calling the city and complaining about the noise. So if that's moved over into another area so it's off of the landing or flight pattern that they use, then it would be so much better.
Right. And so I think, again, it would appear, and we haven't had detailed discussions about this yet, but it would appear that the applicant is self-limiting themselves on the number of dwelling units that they may allow because they put the number 500 in there when more would actually be feasible. And so, hearing your discussion, they may also want to put more language into their plan that also then more specifically suggests where that may be located to address some of the concerns.
It's not single family.
No, it has to be at least 15 units per acre.
Okay,
And
that's,
so-
I wanted to make sure because
I'm
when I
sorry,
heard you
I
speak.
said the wrong, yes.
Yeah,
Right, so we'd expect some type of apartment
Right.
type of development, at least an attached townhome project, at least, if
At
not outright
least.
apartments. Right.
Would the cluster homes that we've been talking about in the recent meetings fall into that category?
Some of the most dense ones are getting close to that, but I think they're still more around 12 or 13.
Okay. All right, is there any other?
Yeah, I have one other question. On the job creation, what jobs are created by these units?
Well, but in the mixed-use residential?
Yeah.
Well,
They
again,
estimate 5,000 jobs
Right.
for 500 houses?
right. Again, the mixed-use employment, mixed-use residential land use designation is primarily an employment-type designation. We'd expect most of the property to be zoned, the light industrial, the planned employment park, office, And currently, it is zoned industrially. Most of the property, then the portion north of Longbow Parkway is currently zoned commercial. And so those types of zoning districts, then we would expect.
Well, that would be 5,000 jobs would be under the business park and community commercial. But under the proposed, it says with 500 housing units, you get 5,000 jobs.
Right, on the part that would still be, again, you've got 70% of the whole area that's still going to go to employment type use.
Okay.
And within that area, they're projecting they could still get those 5,000 jobs.
Okay. I was misreading how this chart worked.
Sorry.
John, how realistic are those numbers?
Again, we have not started
Has
to
there been any
evaluate those yet.
verification?
No, not at this point. Again, this is a new application. It's something we'll do before we come back to you for actual hearing and action.
Okay. Any other questions, board members? All right, then we will close that public meeting of GP Major 14-001 Longbow and move to the next one, which is GP Major 14-002-Mesa 38.
Okay, board members, now we've moved down to the northwest corner of Chrisman and US 60 Freeway. This area, again, talking 38 acres that is adjacent to the freeway, currently has a business park land use designation on it. Part of a little bit larger area that we've been interested in getting developed as an employment center for Mesa, across the street from, I believe it's Home Depot and then the hospital to the northeast. The proposal is to modify this so that the west 25 acres would be in the medium density residential 6 to 10, and then the east 13 acres would be in a community commercial designation. The rules in this area along the freeway is that any time we take more than 20 acres from an employment to a residential use, it makes it a major amendment. They have previously looked at this and thought about trying to develop it with about 19 and a half acres for the residential use, so to keep it as a minor amendment instead of a major. They weren't able to find developers that were willing to work with that small of a tract and really felt like they needed to be over the 20 acres, up around the 25 to make it work. So they've decided to come forward then with this application as a major amendment with those two basic land use categories. So again, the business park allows those employment, industrial type uses and some retail. The proposal will allow, again, the single family residential on that west piece and then the variety of commercial office uses on the east piece. They also provide some information about the number of jobs currently that would be anticipated on this area with the business park, and then what could be anticipated with the change with the community commercial and the medium density residential. So you see that the number of jobs drops a little bit, and the range, again, that could happen between that 6 and 10 units per acre on the residential piece. They've also, with their application, provided some information with regard to their development concept and some of the design components that they would have. Their discussion there talks about trying to mix the uses, have an overall unified program between the residential and commercial areas and some connection between the two so that they could develop and operate as more of a single kind of development to meet some of the objectives we have in terms of that more integrated mixed-use type development form. So they have included that as part to start some design guidance on what they would put into the development. And that's it on this presentation.
Okay, board members, any questions to Mr. Wesley on this GP Major?
I might be getting the sites mixed up, but wasn't there something proposed previously on the site?
Yes, it does currently have a zoning and site plan that were approved back in about 07, 08, someplace back in there. It's a PEP, BIZ, I can't remember exactly. I'm sorry, I didn't go back and look it up. It does have a mix of some retail, hotel, office uses, multi-story on this property. And that happened again back about the time the economy went downward, right? And so that didn't happen.
And this is right on the freeway,
Yes, it's right at the interchange.
not right on Southern.
Right, correct. It's right on the south side of Hampton.
Yeah.
I would assume that eventually Hampton Avenue will continue on
connect
through and connect into that neighborhood to the
West.
Yeah, to the west of that. Is there any possibility in the future that these would be, how much latitude do they have then of moving that magic line? Because there's obviously no straight designation of where that line between community commercial and medium density residential lies. Where is it, how is that going to be tracked on how much of what is given to each?
Given, we know the north-south dimension, we know the acres, and so we can really calculate that depth. It probably is in the application material if we look at the details that are in there. But we'll know pretty close where that line is.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, then let's close GP Major 14-002-Mesa 38 and move on to the Mesa 2040 General Plan Draft.
Let's see, it's right there. Okay. Board members, welcome again. Thank you for your attention this evening. As you know, we have been working on an update to the city's general plan for the last couple of years. We're nearing the home stretch. This is the first of 3 public hearings that we'll be having before the board has the opportunity to make a recommendation on to City Council. Our goal is to get council approval by July 1 so that it can be on the ballot in November. This presentation this evening will be a little bit lengthy because I do want to go through at least a touch on each of the chapters and what's in there, and kind of what's different about this plan compared to the current plan, so the citizens have the opportunity to hear that and then see what comments we have from anybody. So first thing I'm going to talk about is just some of the requirements that we have for going through developing of the plan and the process that's been used. Then the most extensive part will be the review of the draft, talking about some of the major emphasis and the comparison. And then ultimately, the last little bit, some of the comments I've already received, just give you a little highlight of some of those things. So state statutes require that we have a general plan and that we update these every 10 years, and so it's that time for us to get that done. It also specifies some specific topics called elements that we need to include within the plan. I guess one of the things I'll mention right here, it's probably on a slide later too, but the current general plan goes through these requirements with individual chapters and treats them very individually. As we've done this for this particular plan, we've looked at things a little bit more holistically and the connections between the two. And so you won't see chapters labeled with these, but we do have in Chapter 2 an outline that tells you where you can find each of these pieces in the different chapters, because there is a lot of interrelationship between the different pieces. As been working on this, we've been working closely with the Transportation Department because they're also updating the Transportation Plan at this time, and the Transit Department because they're updating the Transit Plan at this time. And Parks and Recreation recently updated their plan, and so it's referenced in here from what they have recently done. We began this process almost 2 years ago. We spent the first 9 months going out a variety of places to get public comment and input on what people were looking for and would like to see in the continued development of the cities. We look out over these next 30 years. With that, we prepared a first draft plan that we had available back in June. We prepared it during June to August and had it available. Feedback on that last fall, September through December. Then with that comment and feedback, prepared what we now have is the second draft plan that has been out for review over the last couple of months. And then we're going to take the comments we have from that, turn it into the final plan for your recommendation and ultimate council approval. We have had a plan advisory committee that we've been working with during this time. This lists the different boards that have provided members for that. Mr. DeBella has been your representative from the Planning and Zoning Board, working with us as we've worked on this plan. We've had a website that provides information about the plan and the draft document, as well as a summary draft of the draft document, are both available out there for anybody that wants to go take a look at what's out there to help provide comments. Attended a lot of different community events over the last month or year and a half to give people opportunity to give us feedback. We've also made specific presentations to a variety of civic groups and organizations to give people opportunity to know what's going on, and then held specific village meetings where this was the topic for people to come and find out what's going on, and then the various periodic presentations here in the council. As part of that process and review and getting feedback from the public, this just captures some of the key issues that we learned through that update process from some surveys. And another way we approached it was to give people kind of that blank slate. Tell us what you want to see your city be 30 years from now. And so what were those comments and things that they had? And these are some of the most common ones that we got from those comments. So we also did work with MAG in terms of their demographic projections into the future. And based on those, over the next 30 years to about 2040, we're expecting to grow by about 170,000 people and add about 130,000 jobs. And these heat maps kind of show the key locations where a lot of that development will occur. So as we look at Mesa today, we see it largely as a sprawling Bloomberg, a city that's grown very rapidly without with a lot of auto-oriented development, and largely a bedroom community. And the feedback that we've gotten for that desired future as we continue to evolve over that next 30-year period is become a more complete and recognizable city that has the safe neighborhoods, good jobs, and great places. And so with those thoughts in mind from the feedback we received, we worked on focusing the plan on those topics to talk about neighborhoods, to talk about the jobs, and to talk about public spaces. And so as we start to get into the plan document itself, and some of the emphasis and organization that resulted from that input is, again, compared to the current document that's very specific on a number of things, particularly in the land use section, very specific, and we'll see a map of that here in a little bit. We felt it important to take a more general approach, a little bit more flexible approach that lets us respond more easily and quickly to changes that occur in the market and as things evolve over time, and let the sub-area plans provide more specific detail than we can do when we're taking a look at the whole city, and various technical plans, such as a transportation plan or water plan, provide those greater details. And then also to stay, again, in that theme of a little higher level, is to reduce the number of goals and policies and strategies that we see in the current plan right now. There are a lot of things in there, and they're good, but there's so many of them, it's easy to get lost in the details and comparing which ones. And so we want to stay at a little higher level in what was really just those key issues and items that we wanted to focus on within each of the areas. Then again, that led to developing 3 guiding principles that we'll talk about a little bit more with jobs, public spaces, and neighborhoods. So the plan, as it's organized, is divided into 4 sections. An introduction section that contains 2 chapters that give some of the background, executive summary, and then some background material. Section 2, which really contains the real meat of the plan, with the vision, the neighborhoods, the jobs, the cultural resources, and the character types that we'll talk about in a little bit. Then some of the supporting thing in terms of what the city does with transportation and water and some of those things, and then finally the administration section. So going through each of those again fairly quickly, but Chapter 1 is the executive summary, which provides a high-level overview of the whole plan and the key elements that are in the plan. Chapter 2, it's where you can go to find out what the background has been, what the processes have been that we've gone through to develop the plan, if anybody wants to kind of understand how we've done that, and then again provides that overview of what is in each chapter and how it relates to the state statute requirements. Chapter 3, we get into the vision. As we talk about the vision, develop the vision, we first identified, as we studied what's going on around the country in this area, looked at some of the literature and from planning organizations and so forth, what are some of those key challenges and opportunities we need to consider, not only as we develop the plan, but as we implement and use the plan. And we came up with these five items that we need to really keep in mind: quality development. We haven't maybe done that as well as we should in the past in Mesa, and when we compare Mesa to some of the other cities around the valley, we can see that and see how it's affected us compared to some of the other cities. And so we want to pay attention to that. Changing demographics. We know that we are evolving as a community. We've got a baby boomer generation that's getting older. We're going to have a higher percentage of senior citizens in the future, and that's going to impact how we grow, the types of services we need to have, and so forth. We also have a large echo boom, basically, generation, millennial generation that's coming along behind that has different needs and looking for different housing and neighborhood styles than what people looked for in the past, and so we need to consider that. So we have other changes culturally and with different ethnic groups and so forth that are moving into the area that have different needs, so we need to be aware of that. Public health is an issue that has become much more prevalent in planning and doing planning work. We've recognized that the way we build cities do affect how healthy we are as a people, and we're seeing a lot of negative impacts on our health, which then affects our communities and our workforce and so forth. And so we need to pay a little closer attention to that. Urban design and placemaking, closely related to that quality development. But the things we heard from the public about wanting to have that greater sense of place in the community, not just a sprawling bedroom community, so we need to pay attention to that urban design and create more recognizable places. And then remembering that we live in a desert, and it has certain impacts on how we should develop and how we act and how we move about and so we should consider that a little bit more. That led then to a list of vision statements. There's about 20 of them, which start off with, in 2040, this is what we expect Mesa to look like and be like. And then finally, we established the 3 guiding principles: create and maintain a variety of great neighborhoods, grow and maintain diverse jobs, provide rich, high-quality public spaces and cultural resources. So as we go through each of the chapters, and you get a chance to read those and look at the goals that are in there, they all relate back to these 3 guiding principles. And that became really the focus of everything we do and how we want to continue to develop. So that's, again, what you'll see. Again, it's different in this plan compared to the current plan. There's that theme really is carried out through each of the chapters and the interrelationship between the different issues. So Chapter 4 of the plan is where we then go specifically into talking about the neighborhoods. And in here we identify some key elements that we believe are very important for developing and maintaining strong neighborhoods. And we talk about each one of those individually. And then what are some of the things we should try to do to help implement that and achieve these objectives. Recognize it's very important for people to feel like they can and should maintain their investment in their neighborhood, whether it's the investment of their home or the investment of their time and their being a part of the neighborhood. It needs to be safe, clean, and healthy. If you don't have that, people are going to want to leave that neighborhood pretty quickly. We need to build that community and foster the social interactions. The more you know your neighbors and feel a part of your neighbors in your neighborhood, the more you're going to feel connected and want to stay and invest in that. Connectivity and walkability. It's frustrating for a lot of people. It's one of the things we heard a lot all across the city was when they have to go all the way around to get to something that's really close. We need that greater level of connectivity and ability to get places. Kids being able to walk to school or to parks or that kind of thing. Improve upon those things. Provide for diversity. Again, that's back to the changing demographics piece. We know we've got some changes happening. We need to prepare for that. We also need to look at how we build around different parts of the city right now. We see a lot of high-density development in the west and low-density development in the east. And so if you live in one place or the other and your housing needs change, you might not be able to find that housing type that you need in that area of the community. But you maybe really want to stay in that area. So if you can find a little bit more diversity around the city in terms of housing types, then you might be able to stay within a neighborhood as your housing needs change. And then part of creating that sense of place, developing that neighborhood character and identity. So you can say, I live in the neighborhood that has this or whatever. So there's that little bit more identity. We all know where Lehigh is. It's got character and personality. If it's on the Citrus area, those are some places we already have that have that. And think about that a little bit more so that you have that identity that creates that interest. And then again, the design quality and development. We need to pay attention in our neighborhoods to the quality at which they're being developed. So we have one goal for this chapter, it's to create and maintain great neighborhoods. We didn't need a whole lot of other things. And then just 3 policies and strategies that help reinforce that. Continued on in Chapter 4, this chapter also then deals with what's required from state statute with regard to housing. Obviously, a big part of neighborhoods is the housing that's in there. It's the main piece. Neighborhoods also have schools and parks and churches and some small shopping and some other things like that make up a neighborhood, but housing is certainly the big piece of that. Then we've identified 6 different housing types that are particularly important that we've dealt with in the previous plan and feel like it's important to continue to look at to make sure we're addressing these into the future. And then redevelopment is another issue, again, required for us to talk about by state statute, but important anyway, even it wasn't, as we look at the Western Third in particular, and maybe a little bit more of Mesa. It's getting older. We've been really focused on the growth to the east and how we accommodate that. And while we've been doing that, the older parts of the city are maybe starting to show their age a little bit, developed in a time when things were growing very quickly and we got overbuilt, maybe in some of the commercial uses, and how do we deal with that into the future as we meet the needs of the community. So this section talks about some of that and how we can address the redevelopment and revitalization of some of the neighborhoods. Then we also deal with historic preservation in this particular chapter. So this chapter, again, in terms of kind of how it's different from the current plan, is considering these different issues and topics in relationship to each other instead of individually talking about land use and then later talking about housing or redevelopment. We've tried to integrate them and really look at how they tie together and affect each other to create those neighborhoods. Chapter 5, growing and maintaining diverse and stable jobs. Key elements in this, we talk about the business climate in Mesa, and with that we relate that back mostly to the Council's HEAT initiative and those key opportunity industries that we have that we think we can attract to Mesa to continue to grow our economy. We talk about education needs, so we have that skilled workforce and what we can be doing to have those available. The sense of place even is important for the employment centers. If that's not there, they can fall apart over time and the quality is not maintained. And so we discuss some of that, and we identified then the little map that's shown on here are those key economic development areas that we have in the city, 4 primary areas, and then some of them have some sub-areas that go with that. And there's some description about what happens in each of those and how they can continue to evolve. We need to work regionally. We can't just operate as individually as a city. We're too interconnected with the cities around us and so forth. So we talk about the need to continue that and developing our infrastructure so we have that available for business and industry as it grows. We also recognize that when we talk about jobs, it's not just about bringing in the large employers. It's about the retail development that's important to our tax base and important to providing that overall atmosphere we need in the city. People want to bring their jobs, bring their employees, where they then also have that opportunity to shop and get the entertainment and some of those things that they want to have. So we also consider a little bit in here that retail redevelopment and revitalization. We know we've got some centers that were built back again in the big growing times. We've probably got again overbuilt on some of the commercial areas, and we've got some that aren't as fully utilized as they could be and struggling to maintain. And so we talk a little bit here about how we can, through a flexible land use approach, provide better options so that as a market opportunity comes up to redevelop some of those, that it makes it easier to happen. And then again, the goal is to grow and maintain jobs, and there's a policy and a few strategies here also. Chapter 6 of the plan talks about those public spaces. This is very important from the economic development perspective, again, for attracting employers and attracting employees and retaining them in the city, that we have those kind of public spaces and activities that make Mesa inviting and give it that sense of place. So again, we've talked about some of those things are important with developing public spaces and how they need to work together to really provide for the community, and also the cultural resources, the museums, the libraries, and that sort of thing from the city perspective, but also addresses some of the private things that happen in the community that addresses the cultural needs of the community. So we have those services and activities that people want. And again, just a goal and a couple of strategies within that chapter. So we also, in this particular chapter, talk about Parks and Recreation and their plan, related back to their plan they've already adopted. We brought into some of the highlights from that, their key themes and vision objectives from there. Excuse me. We also refer to the Mesa Arts Center and the Mesa Library and what their plans are for development. So again, this was a new approach that takes some of the required elements. The state statutes, again, requires to talk about the parks and talk about the public facilities, but we've done it in a way that we think really addresses what our needs are for growing the city. Chapter 7, community character. Our current general plan is a couple hundred pages, but most people only know one page in the current plan, and we'll see that here in just a minute, the land use plan. That's about all most people think of as the land use plan. We've tried to expand upon that by taking this character approach to how we want to see our city in the future, and be more general, focusing on creating places and neighborhoods, and then also relying on sub-area plans to get into more specifics and taking this much more general approach as a city. So here again is our current general plan map that shows those very specific land uses with a lot of different categories, and you can compare that to what's being proposed as the character map for the future. I know you can't read all that, but you see most of it is yellow. Most of it, and the yellow is neighborhoods. We know most of Mesa is neighborhoods, residential areas primarily, and that's what it will continue to be in the future. Then we also highlight those larger and main employment areas, commercial areas, parks, and so forth with those different colors. And then also have designated along Main Street, Power Road, Country Club, Southern, and Dobson Roads, transit districts where we either currently have the bus rapid transit, light rail, a significant degree of transit activity, or expect in the near future by the transit plan, and provide a specific, basically an overlay for that for more intensity mixed-use type development. So I'll touch on just briefly the different character types that are shown on there. Neighborhoods, again, they're primarily residential, but they also provide for other things that support that residential use. We recognize we have some different types and sizes, and we want to continue that in the future. It's not about trying to create one cookie-cutter type of neighborhood, but recognizing the different types we have. We have the large lot rural areas. We have some traditional neighborhoods, mostly around the downtown area. Most of Mesa currently is a suburban kind of neighborhood style. We also have significant areas of manufactured homes that will be with us into the future. And so we need to recognize those, and we have some guidelines for each of those and the types of zonings that go with each of those. The other character type that was out there is the neighborhood village centers. These are the smaller commercial nodes that you might see at various corners that typically would not have a big box in them. They may have a pharmacy or some of that smaller scale. It's going to serve a close neighborhood area typically around them, and has that opportunity to be a little bit more neighborhood oriented than some of the larger ones have. And so generally these are about 15 to 25 acres in size, generally serve a radius of about 1 to 2 miles, generally going to be low scale, that kind of thing. May have some mix of uses in them, but they're going to have that opportunity to relate a little bit more to the neighborhood. Another type we have is the downtown. Recognize it specifically because it is a little bit different, and it is important to the city currently and will be in the future. So this has a very traditional urban form, and we want to maintain that into the future in a wide range of land uses. Another one is the mixed-use activity districts. These have both a community scale and a regional scale, and so these are the larger shopping centers that, such as Southern and Gilbert Road. Santa Fe Shopping Square would be a community scale mixed-use activity district. And so it's going to draw from a larger radius than just that immediate neighborhood. It's going to have a little bit more height to it. It's going to be a little more auto-oriented than the village would be. Then you get to the regional scale, and there you're talking about a mall, Fiesta Mall, Superstitions Mall, or up at Riverview. That'd be more regional scale type mixed-use activity districts. Got a variety of things going on there. And so we didn't want to call these commercial districts because we expect more than commercial. We want to see that variety of activity that we see in many of these already. With the office uses and the retail uses, maybe a little bit of light manufacturing could happen. The residential could happen there. The entertainment things could happen in these mixed-use activity districts. So it has that name to it. And so, again, trying to be flexible and allow the market to kind of direct those things over time instead of being so specific as we were in the current plan. We've got, the office here. We've got this level of retail here and that level of retail there. Let it be more flexible. Mixed-use community district. This is one holdover from the current plan, and this applies out today on the former GM Proving Grounds property that was received this land use designation for creation of those new communities out there and has some specific zoning that goes with it. And so we kept that the same, and could be available for other places in the city, and it may be used, but we brought that over rather than trying to create something else in its place. Another one is the employment districts. These were the purple areas on the map. We've got some main areas around Gateway and Falcon Field and West Mesa where these show up. There's a variety of industrial type activities, the business park, industrial parks, employment centers. And so, again, depending upon where they fall in that scale, would have those types of uses. And then we have specialty districts, which are similar to the employment districts, but they are very specialized. This is the airport, the hospital, college campus that have a one large, very specific use that's going to take a large land area and usually be kind of set off by itself. And then, as mentioned, the transit districts, and that has two subtypes, whether it's at the station itself or it's along a corridor. And it's trying to help facilitate the more mixed-use urban type environment because you've got the transit ability there. People could live in those areas, work in those areas, could have less need for automobiles, so more pedestrian-oriented type activities. And then the last one was the parks and open space, which was green on the map. So, again, here's the map. And one more time, you kind of see how those lay out across the city. Within Chapter 7, then on the community character area, within each of those character types, we have a description that tells kind of generally what that character type does, lists some typical uses. Again, we're trying to not be too prescriptive about what that is, give you an idea so you get a flavor of what it's about, and that we can use in the future. Form and guideline standards get a little bit more specific about, so you pick up those nuances, the difference between a village commercial versus a regional commercial, and so forth, and then what zoning districts can actually work with that. And so, again, it provides a much more flexible approach into the future. What we will look at in terms of development as it occurs is it meeting the intent or the character in the area? Someone may come up with a zoning district we hadn't anticipated, but they're using it in a way that still gets us where we want to go in terms of the character. And so we won't have to do a plan amendment or anything to do that. We can just incorporate it if it's getting us where we want to go and fitting into the context of the area. And so that would be that more important thing. And then again, we have one goal, and that's to foster the development pattern that leads to the neighborhood's jobs and rich public spaces. Within this particular chapter, we have a policy, the 10 policies relating to each of the different character types. And so I just put one in here. For example, neighborhood character. It tells us how to kind of implement and use that particular character type. So we have that for each of them. Chapter also talks about land use more specifically. It has an existing land use map, general intensity map that I'm going to show you here in just a minute. This can go with the character map. Because one of the things that we lose a little bit from that character map, where everything is that same shade of yellow all across the city, is how do we really recognize a desert uplands from a downtown neighborhood, which would have a kind of a different intensity of character. So we've developed a map to help address that. Then also we have the map to deal with the aggregates. And also one that deals with growth areas. This is, again, a requirement from state statute. We talk about growth areas. And so we've identified 4 key growth areas in the city and identified then some of the things that are needed in those areas to help them to grow. Oops, wrong direction. So here's that land use intensity map. And so the darker the color, the more intensity of activity, use we would expect to see, and the lighter the color, the less intensity. And it allows individual developments to be more dense maybe in a lighter shaded area if it works into the context. But overall, it's kind of the relatively what we expect the density to be. You can see on the scale on the side, we didn't put numbers to them specifically. We're not trying to, again, get too specific. All the way to the low density, we generally think is around 1 unit per acre. We're talking Desert Uplands and Lehigh and some of those places. And the high density is getting someplace above 20 units per acre. And there's a paragraph that you'll see in the revised document that talks about that a little bit more specifically. But you can see the light rail line, the transit area is where the primary densities would be, and then some out by Gateway. And then this is the growth area map that we have in the plan. It identifies as 4 key areas where we see growth. And growth is both new growth and redevelopment type activity occurring into the future. So we've moved now from that chapter, that section 2, that's kind of the heart of the plan, and now we're moving into section 3, which is the background, the infrastructure kind of section. So here we talk about chapter 8 with resources, energy resources. There we go. And this is primarily talks about the city's electric and natural gas operations and how they see they're growing and evolving over the next 30 years. Chapter 9, environment, planning, preservation, conservation. A lot of these, again, are required by the state statutes that we address. And so we've had some discussion, some feedback. We've got an energy chapter. We've got a water chapter. Should the water conservation be in the water chapter and the energy conservation be in the energy chapter? We could go either way. We chose to put all the conservation stuff together into one chapter. And so that's why it's organized the way that is. Chapter 10, the public facilities, this is where we look at what our needs are into the future in terms of our facilities for, again, the law enforcement, fire, healthcare, so forth. Some of these things aren't directly things that the city does. Again, the healthcare is not something we do, but again, state statutes tells us we need to address that topic. So that's in here also. So we look at where we're at and what some of the needs might be into the future. Public safety is, again, a requirement. We look at those fire and medical services and the different hazards and how we're handling preparedness. Transportation chapter, again, I mentioned earlier, Transportation Department is currently updating the city's transportation plan at the same time. And so they have provided basically this chapter for us as a summary of what they're doing with the transportation plan and where it's going, complementing very well what we're doing from the land use side and the objectives for the more recognizable city, addressing the neighborhood issues and how the public right-of-ways that we have, the streets, are our largest public open space that we have throughout the city and connects the city. And so look at that in a little bit more, a little different way, thinking of it not just in terms of getting the cars through, but how it really is being that public space. So there's a little bit more about that in that chapter. Water resources deals with these items that are important to providing a water service system throughout the city, as well as then the reuse and the wastewater. Chapter 4, financing a maturing city. This is a section where we look at how do we fund the continued growth and development of the city and maintenance of the city and using the different resources that we have for that. Chapter 15, development review. This chapter is new and a little bit different than what we've had in the plan before. Again, taking the more general approach, more flexible approach to how development may occur and reviewing zoning cases and so forth. We felt like we needed some tools that we could look at that tell us how to look at those and how to kind of weigh things together to provide some structure for reviewing those. So that's laid out in Chapter 15. And then 16 talks about implementing the plan and administering the plan. So all the different strategies and policies that are listed elsewhere are repeated here within who has responsibility for them. Talks about some of the other basic planning tools we have, zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations, so forth. And it also tells us what's a major amendment and what's a minor amendment. Again, we've taken a much more flexible approach in this version to what we have today. And under this plan, if it's approved, the likelihood of having a major amendment is pretty small. A minor amendment needs to be, we changed the number a little bit. We started at 5. We talked about 10. I can't remember what we settled on now in the current plan. I'll look back at that in a while. But it's a little bit larger area because we're talking about the character. It has to be something, a change that's big enough to really affect that character when you look at it from a high level before we need to worry about changing the plan. So it's a higher level before we really have to think about changing the plan document itself. So that is an overview of the entire plan, and I don't think that took too long. So we've had this second draft of the plan out now for several months for review and comment. We've started to get a few. There's several, of course, as you look back at it, you find various grammatical things, incorrect words. I found out the word parameter is not the same as the word perimeter, and so fixing things like that in the document. And so as we go with those, we're not going to talk about those a lot, but you'll see them ultimately. But then some of the more substantive modifications we'll start sharing with you. But Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport has looked at it, and they provided some comments. A group, Livable Communities Coalition, has provided us with some of their comments on the plan. And so we're reviewing those to see how they can fit in. And again, we have various staff comments, changes as we look at it, such as that land use intensity map. As we looked at it, what we have currently in the plan document didn't really quite accomplish what we wanted to, so we've made those changes. And so you'll see those come out as more specific changes here. The goal, as we continue to move forward, is we have a second public hearing in 2 weeks at Red Mountain Library, 6 o'clock, to see what public comment there may be. The staff presentation at that meeting will be shorter because you've heard it, and we've been able to do it for the television audience, which I know is out there listening. And then, but opportunity for that comment. Comments that we've received, we'll put together in a document where we'll give you a strike-through version of what the changes are that we're recommending to the plan that you will receive in a staff report prior to your May 21st hearing. We'll also have the Plan Advisory Committee that meets on in May. I'm thinking that's the wrong date. I'm thinking it's really the 7th. They meet the first Wednesday of the month. Typically, we've talked about having a second meeting on the 14th with them, for them to prepare their recommendation for you. You'll have that recommendation. We'll have the final hearing on May 21. That's when we hope you'll feel comfortable with being able to make a recommendation on the City Council onto the plan. We're expecting that council public hearing to be on June 16th. And at that point, they could take action on it, but we need them to take action by July 1, again, for the vote in November. So that's my presentation. I'd be glad to take any comments, questions you have. It's scheduled as a public hearing. I don't know. I've been facing this way, so I don't know who's back there. If anybody's just biting at the bit to come make comment, but this is an opportunity for public also to make comment.
Well, board members, do you want to comment on anything now or send your comments in via email before the 30th?
I have a couple comments I want to make. I think the most important part of this document, I appreciate the work that's gone into it. It's a huge job. The most important part of this is on page 2-5, and it says the Mesa General Plan is a statement of city policy and a guide for decision making. And so that creates the framework for everything that goes on. So I do have a couple comments on things that I've noticed through here and may or may not be agreed on by this board or anybody in the staff. The first thing is it seems like throughout the plan there is very much of a bias against cars and us being able to move cars to and from a place or have adequate parking. Now, I know we've done quite well with that, but there's a desire to have more pedestrian accessibility. I understand that. I like that. I agree with it. But I don't think we can lose sight of the numbers of people that live here and the kind of gridlock that happens when we don't take care of the streets and the roadways and not just narrow them down and put more walking paths. Because 6 months of the year, we don't walk here. And 12 months of the year, most of us drive to a job or get on some transportation that takes us to a job. So, for example, in page 1-4, it says in the middle of the first column, the second paragraph, it starts with, "Today Mesa has many positive things." Okay, at the same time, we have many areas of the community that are showing their age and struggling from having been built in a time of auto-oriented boom development. To me, I think at the same time, we have many areas of the community that are showing their age, period. When communities age, there are significant issues. Another place that same thing is in page 5-14. And it says developing site standards is the bullet. And midway through it, this emphasis should be given priority over the traditional auto-oriented design, blah, 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 about cars. On page 7-8, it talks about neo-traditional neighborhoods, which is fine for new if that's what we want to do, whoever decided that. But then it says these shorter blocks and walking paths, blah, blah, blah. This is the desired character type for our new neighbors and for retrofitting existing neighborhoods. I'm just pointing out through here, it feels like the emphasis and the policy making, because this is going to be a policy guide, would take us away from looking and planning transportation for automobiles, which we're going to have. And we're kidding ourselves if we don't think that's still going to be a huge part of the city of Mesa. So that's my spiel on that. I have 2 or 3 other little comments. On page 1-9.
On 9?
1-9. Item number 2. This is a burr under mine, and I apologize. Continuing to develop and expand city programs. I don't think we should look to expand any city programs. I think we need to look at how we can help citizens. But to me, that says we're going to spend a lot of money to staff and develop city government. And I think it needs to be reworded to move away from that. And along those same lines, there's a whole chapter on dust control, which we should never expect in Mesa because we don't live in a desert. But the county is the dust police. And when you build or develop or whatever, the county, you fill out this lengthy application, and then you pay lots of money for them to patrol that and police it. I don't think the city should set up another bureau or layer of that, and I don't know by including that in here if that then becomes a policy issue that needs to be funded. So I would hope that some way that's not taken that way. I'm just telling you, as I'm reading this as a policy statement, I would worry that that's put that way. Let me see if I have anything else. Sorry, guys. Am I taking too long? I had a question on page 9-6, and this is just sheerly dumb on my part. Encourage the use of distributed renewable energy generation. Does that mean solar panels? Number 5. What does that mean?
Page 9-6?
9-6.
And item number 5? Show me.
Yeah, the top of the left. I just don't know what that means.
Yeah, it means that the picture below it, encourage the use of rooftop
Solar panels.
Yeah.
And so encourage, does that mean subsidize? Or does that mean allow in neighborhoods? Or I'm trying to think from a policy standpoint where that leads me now if I go to the city to apply for some housing permit or remodel or whatever that is. Let me see if I have anything else. I've got several other things, but I will email them to you. I did get a kind of a chuckle out of the discussion on property tax in here where it says property tax may provide an advantage to the city as a large and stable source of revenue, okay, because they are familiar to citizens and business. But it doesn't say they're distasteful or... I just had to get I thought that was a comic relief part of this, so... Anyway, I will email you several other things.
Good, thank you.
Thanks for listening to me.
Piggybacking on Beth here, it's of course you know my feelings on social design and etc.
I think I've heard it before.
You know, and it's kind of laced all the way through here. I don't know why we've got a part about natural gas vehicles. I mean, they're nice, and the statement's very sweet, and it's a good, feel-good statement, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't say how we're going to do it, or thou shalt provide however many in there. It seems like, I use that just as an example. Or the fact on the encourage, like Beth was saying, they encourage the use of distributed renewable energy generation. Well, how, when we're looking at this for a general plan, how do we, that just seems like an extraneous statement to make the book bigger or to make everyone feel good that we've now included a little statement on there. Or maybe it was part of the grant from the federal government to do this thing. I don't know.
That's actually part of the state statute requirement that we deal with energy and renewable resource provisions. So.
Okay, but like it's like there's a statement, but how does it implement it into our general plan? It's just a nice statement in there, and it's laced through all the different things that we have here. So I'll put mine together in emails too, because I've got my other book at home that's got all my I have pink tags on it. So it's just one of those things. Looking here, sitting on a planning and zoning board, how do we, when it comes in, it's 2030. Of course, I'm dead by then, but I sure hope to be anyway. It wouldn't be very nice looking when I'm 98 years old. But how are they going to police that and say, unless you're going to say in the future our zoning code, which sometime will be reworked and added to, is now going to take these and make them law and say thou shalt put in 5 natural gas or electric vehicles charging stations per commercial building, or however you do that. Is that what the end goal is then?
I hadn't thought about that, but thank you for the suggestion. We'll work on that. It's part of the whole concept of, this is the general plan. The general plan is that we want to encourage the use of renewables. A subsequent, either through the energy department or through the environmental department that may take that general concept and develop different ideas, programs, whatever. Like, some things they already are doing with the efforts to put solar panels on the different parking structures, shaded parking canopies around city facilities, that type of thing. And so, it'd be that next level. Something zoning, that's always a possibility. Anything like that would come back through a public process, through this board and through the council before it actually be enacted, and wouldn't be if there wasn't support for it.
Board members, you have any other comments?
I guess the only thing I would say is, I think what you're kind of pointing out is this idea that the general plan is not supposed to be this prescriptive document. So we purposely is to be more general and more flexible. And so sometimes you trying to find that balance.
I just have a problem with feel-good statements that don't mean anything, that are just inserted into official documents that somewhere down the line it starts getting interpreted that, oh, now we need to have an energy code in the city of Mesa, and you've got to have, like that's happened, and now you're prescribed to have these kind of things which double the cost of construction in the electrical because it came from this. That's the only thing which happened. So anyway, if there's no other questions for Mr. Wesley, then let's adjourn our meeting till April 30th at 6 o'clock at the Red Mountain Library.
I don't know if anybody turned in any blue cards, but it is a public hearing in case anybody wants.
Bill will come on April 30th. You want any comments from the vast viewing audience? Then we'll adjourn.